Let's go to the difference between raw and sunflower seeds. And this is probably one of the important parts I want everyone to listen to, is that there are many systems of food processing. In fact, there's 8 big ways of food processing, 8 different ways, and they're broadly broken out into 2 different ways. This is something that is not discussed, but we're going to discuss here. So what are the 8 different ways in the 2 big areas? Thermal and non-thermal. So there's thermal, meaning where you can steam, roast, fry, or boil. I mean, there's other ways, but these are sort of think about it when you cook. You're applying heat and you steam. To me, steaming is a wonderful way to cook. You're preserving nutrients. It's also, if you're eating plants, it's breaking it down so you can digest the cellulose. Roasting, some people like roasting. Frying, and then boiling. So those are where you're applying heat, thermal. Those 4 different ways. I'm sure that some people may say there's microwaving or inductive heating. There's a number of different ways, but these are the 4 ways. The non-thermal ways are soaking. Believe it or not, that's another way to process food. You can take nuts and just leave them overnight or 18 hours, just soak them. It's different than germinating. Germination is where you actually wait, you soak them. You may soak them for 10 hours. You take the stuff out of the water and you put it in a cheesecloth and you hang it, and that's where it starts sprouting. Different than soaking. The next process is fermentation. You can take, for example, seeds or rice or whatever it is, you soak it, and then you may grind it, and then you may keep it in a relatively warm place for another 24 hours until it uses a natural bacteria and it starts fermenting. And the other thing is mechanical. Think about, you can take food and blend it. When you make a smoothie, you're just blending it, or you take a mortar and pestle. So you want to think about this, and let me help you look at this. So these are the 2 major ways, but the 8 different ways you can process food. So I want you to look at that, because depending on how you process food, you can get very, very different outcomes. Frying, obviously, is not a great thing to do under certain conditions. In other conditions, some people say it may be more beneficial. And then same with germination is very different than fermentation. If you have animals, and you notice your animals take food, sort of disgusting, but when I had huskies, or if you have wolf type animals, they'll take food and they'll bury it, and then they'll go dig it up. They're literally letting the food ferment. And what is fermentation? Fermentation is literally pre-digestion. So if you look at your stomach as a vessel, in traditional medicines, one of the ways that you want to eat is that the more that you can pre-digest the food, you make it easier on your body. So you're getting food that's pre-digested. So you're not putting out a lot of energy to digest that food. But anyway, it's very important to keep this in mind. There are different methods of food processing. Not all methods are the same. So for example, to go a little bit deeper, steaming on the thermal side is typically for 10 minutes, 100 degrees, where you essentially steam it 5 to 10 minutes. Roasting is 120 to 160 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes. Frying is typically like you do it in oil, 180. Now there's some air fryers, right? 180 to 190 degrees, 10 to 15 minutes. And boiling, where you put the food in the water, steaming is not in the water, 10 to 15 minutes. So these are the different thermal processes. Soaking. So let's discuss this. Soaking is you leave it in water for up to 20 minutes to 16 hours. Very different process. Germination. Now this includes soaking, sprouting, and then drying at room temperature for up to 24 to 48 hours. I may do sort of just a sprouting training, but let's say you take your sunflower seeds, you get some water, soak it in there for, let's say, a day. Then you take the seeds out, throw away the water. You get cheesecloth, put the seeds in there. Then you hang the cheesecloth for a day or 2 days until you see these sprouts growing. That is actually known as germination or sprouting. Someone says here, my angry wife steams longer than 10 minutes. Dr. Shiva, trust me, 10 minutes is peanuts. Depends on how you like your food. Depends on how you like it. And then the other process is fermentation. This is where you expose the food to microorganisms with minimal water for up to 40, 72 hours. And this is usually after it's ground up. So think about wine is a fermented food. Beer is not. Beer is typically heated. Here, you do not heat it. Okay, there's no heating or pasteurization. You're soaking. Some people soak, they germinate, and then they ferment, which means you ground up the soaked or germinated items, and then you expose it, and then with minimal water for up to 4 to 72 hours. Mechanical, chopping, trimming, peeling, crushing, slicing, sieving, and pressing. If you go look at cold press oils, the oil is cold pressed, right? is pressed down. It's not fermented, germinated, or so. So again, why am I sharing this with you? I want you to understand that how we process food, that affects the systemic nature of the food. So now let's go to our research, what we discovered. How does sprouting affect sunflower seed nutrition? And here are the 3 key measures. So how does sprouting affect sunflower seed nutrition? And here are the 3 key measures. So let's look at it. The first is the effect of sprouting you can measure by the level of phytic acid. Now, phytic acid is something you want to be careful of. Phytic acid is what the plant actually produces to protect itself, right, from critters. So if you were to just consume it, you need to know that the phytic acid can have an effect on leaching minerals from your body. It doesn't mean it's all bad, but you want to keep that phytic acid levels low. So you can see right here, our research showed you have about 180 milligrams of phytic acid in 100 grams for raw, 180 milligrams. But in germinated, this literally drops by nearly a half, as you can see that, more than a half. So germinating lowered the phytic acid, a molecule that blocks mineral uptake in sunflower seeds. Germinated sunflower seeds have 64% lower phytic acid than that of raw sunflower seeds. So just ponder that. When you germinate, you reduce the phytic acid level. So that means your body can use the foods and you don't lower your mineral uptake. This is why if you look at a lot of vegetarians, people say, wow, that vegetarian doesn't look too healthy. Well, traditional cultures have learned that if you're going to be a vegetarian, you better process that food right. And one of the things is you want to lower the phytic acid. Deborah Hill says, what about soaking? Good point, Deborah. So if you soak for 8 hours, and there's other studies done on this, and then you throw away the water and you clean it, that will lower phytic acid, but they're not to the level of sprouting, but definitely soaking is better. I typically will take almonds, soak them overnight, and then peel them and crush them and eat them. It lowers phytic acid. If you have a little more time, you could sprout them. But we're talking about sprouting today. Now, minerals, the second key measure. Now, look at this. Look at the level of minerals in raw and germinated. It's quite profound difference. So magnesiums, there's 3.3 times more. Mineral availability increased sprouted sunflower seeds 1.25 to 3.3 times. If you look at calcium, that's about 2.5 times more. Potassium, 1.25 times more. Iron, about 2.5 times more. And zinc, about 2.5 times more. And then if you go here, you can look at what happens when you have magnesium, calcium, potassium, the vitamins. The vitamins here in the sunflower seeds, you can see are at a particular, if you look at the iron and the zinc and potassium, they're about 1.5, 2.5 times more. So you basically have a lot more of the vitamins, minerals, and the phytic acid in sunflower seeds.